The idea that authenticity will come through verifiable information persistent on chains makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think that is going to be, in terms of actual societal impact, one of the leading themes for 2026 and beyond.
Validating our thesis. Creating something that you can prove, hey, like I did this small thing and it already led to some traction. I can get to that point now without any funding, without any external dependencies.
They're one of the most valuable businesses on planet Earth right now. They're owned by a couple of people. Paulo Arduino will probably rise into the ranks of the richest people on planet Earth if Tether IPOs.
This revolution actually leads to a complete new user base that didn't exist before, which will probably be much bigger than human users, which are agentic users. Join and find out, he says. Hey, Max.
Happy New Year, Onur. How are things going?
Happy New Year, man. Pretty good. Feeling FOMO for the first time in a long while.
How come?
I feel like everyone woke up to Vibecoding and Claude Code, which I've been using since the beginning of last year, especially Claude Code, when everyone was still using Cursor. And I mean, I know it doesn't mean much, like people play around with it and then they let it sit for a while, but I do feel that the world woke up to Claude Code and it's creating some FOMO on my side. Finally,
was there anything in particular that you've seen over the Christmas, New Year's break that got you so excited about it?
I've been using Claude Code for a year, and I would say I'm a very savvy, experienced Claude Code user. I have my hooks, my skills, my slash commands, my sub agents. It's just that, there was a short time where you could arbitrage, and in a short amount of time, you could do a lot of research, you could produce a lot of code, presentation, yada, yada, yada. And I have seen a lot of tweets from idea guys or from founders or people who are not full-time engineers who are able to build things quickly with Claude Code in a frequency that I haven't seen before, which makes me extremely bullish. But it also creates a lot of FOMO on my side to finally ship something, because while I have been upping my expertise and experience with regards to that, I'm getting very close to finally shipping a product, a production-ready product, and that's kind of the difference, right? Like you get to 80%, even with Vibecoding, maybe even in 2 days, very fast, but then making it production-ready and shipping it takes probably another few weeks, so which used to be another few months. So all in all, things are pretty good, but that's why I feel FOMO.
So what has changed compared to last year? The whole Vibecoding, building low effort, low complexity platforms with AI that has been around for a year. So what is different this time that you think that the stuff that is getting produced right now will actually stick compared to what has mostly been forgotten, whatever was built in last year?
So last year, there has still been some discussions around the lines of, oh, but like this isn't production ready code. It will never replace a production engineer. Now I can safely say we're at the point where even the best AI engineers in the world who produce complex systems, there's consensus along the fact that no human at some point will produce any code anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. Obviously, there's always going to be exceptions which verify the main thesis, which is, in general, no human will produce code anymore. So I think the world is changing, engineering is changing with regards to you need to be able to instruct and manage a set of agents and coordinate them such that it produces code, which then you can quality assure and test and bring to production. And this can be done with extremely small teams. I would say anything more than 2-3 people, for most apps, I would already question why. Like, why do you need more than 2-3 people for this? Is there like, I mean, one thing I haven't figured out yet is speed of development. Like, how do you scale with this amount of tooling, the speed of development such that with 10 people you can produce at that speed? But right now where I feel comfortable is with like teams of 2-3 people having so much velocity every day. Like, it doesn't make sense to give you that metric, but just to like give you an idea, it's like thousands of lines of code every day are being produced. Every engineer could easily produce 2 to 10 PRs per day, pull requests, which are like major new additions to your product, to your code base, depending on the complexities of those, right? So that didn't exist before. And now it's consensus that AI is doing all that. So the quality of reasoning models, especially Claude, Anthropic's Opus 4.5, I think, was a major one, has improved drastically. And now there's like no more questions about whether AI will be able to produce good code.
What do you think will get built though? Because for me, the leading question for 2026 and beyond is that could it be that we have taken the entire online economy too far in the sense that it has become from a means to an end of making our real lives easier to becoming an end in of itself? And at least for me, I struggle to see any actual utility in the vast majority of things that have been built over the past years. I mean, if I had to come down to something that I would consider worth building, where that actually improves the quality of life or where you can unlock new markets, well, like maybe go over to Venezuela and start an oil company or something like that. Could it be that the entire online coding digital sector has been very much overweight in the economy over the past years?
I don't think so. I want to give you a couple different examples with regards to LLMs. So, you know, if you are a business and you need a website, you would used to go to a web agency, spec your website. You would need to at least give input or produce a bunch of content, take a bunch of images, and pay probably like few $1,000s to have your website produced in a few weeks, right? Now that's literally a 2-hour session. I mean, let's say half a day. Now that's like half a day. You speak to an LLM, it produces the content, it produces the website, it produces the designs. If you don't have images at hand, it can even produce these, but I would say it's probably good to have some real images or at least like basic, imagery. And yeah, like that's like the most simple use case. Everyone needs a website, I would say. If you go to more complex systems, it's the same thing. Like what used to be a 7 to 10 people engineering team, now you can do with 2 people. So like there's a very, very clear cost saving there, which sometimes you're at the edge of profitability. Like imagine, you know how much engineers make, right? Like engineers anywhere in the world make somewhere between 50K and, I mean, there's no limit on the top, but let's say 250K. So if you can cut, let's say 6 engineers because of that, on average with employer costs, okay, that's 1.2 million. And, having like a product that generates, let's say 5,000 in revenue, you all of a sudden become profitable. So there's like many examples here. But when it comes to net new things that don't exist, I would say there's also a change, because most of the time it's technical product people or engineers who create new products. Very rarely it's business people who push their vision together with like a tech co-founder. Now, those people, idea guys or like business people, are enabled to build prototypes. No one cares about those people bringing their app to production. It doesn't matter. But they can build a functioning prototype, which does what? It eliminates things we've done for years. There's no more complicated design processes. I think like we can cut the whole like design thinking, design process out of the equation, just because it's like, yeah, it's probably valuable, but is it as valuable as wasting 2 weeks? Definitely no. Coordinating with external resources? Definitely no. Same for designers, same for product people. So I think like the translation from idea to functioning prototype has just been eliminated. And what matters most of the time? Validating your idea, validating your thesis, creating something that you can prove, hey, like I did this small thing and it already led to some traction, right? I can get to that point now without any funding, without any external dependencies. Once I get to that point, I can still reintroduce everything. I can reintroduce design, product, design thinking, managers, engineers, whatever I want, but I will be able to de-risk much, much faster. Another perspective I'd like to say is like time to value has reduced drastically. And time to value is something that, in my opinion, people need to optimize their entire like business around. Like, how do you get to value for customers as soon as possible without all these like bells and whistles that people are sometimes building? So in that sense, to answer your question more specifically, I'm with you in the sense that 99% of vibe coded applications are probably useless and are probably noise and will never make it to production level readiness. However, I think the 1% that are now enabled to vibe code in a way that just didn't exist before will make up for it. So the fact that most things are useless doesn't, to me, change the fact, right? Like, most tokens are useless. Most mobile apps, I would say, are useless. Most websites are useless. That's normal. At least in the internet, like in the digital world, it's normal. In the physical world, I think it's not as normal. But
I would say we have normalized it also in the physical world due to lower interest rates. And I mean, basically half of the GDP of major Western economies being made up or propped up by government spending. I think that has led to a lot of buildup of slack and basically dead businesses, bad ideas that are somehow still surviving and still existing.
why?
And
I mean, Somali daycare is very valuable.
yeah, but I mean, that's one of a few very valuable ones. I think they're going to flip NVIDIA very soon. That's one of my big bets for 2026 to invest in tokenized stocks of Somali daycare in Minnesota. But I mean, to come back to your point that you made around the engineers being less needed, let's say, in their quantity, what do you think will, if you have 10 engineers right now, you're going to replace 7 or 8 with them with AI? What do you think the other 7 or 8 are going to do? Are they going to start their own business? What will happen to all of these people?
So I think realistically, you're not going to get rid of the other 6 people. I think like as long as people are able to get up to speed, and you're just going to be able to get more done, which hopefully also translates into some commercial value. So if you have a customer producer relationship, maybe you can sell more service to the customer, which you weren't able to serve before because of resource constraints. But now all of a sudden, every single resource with the same amount of like hour utilization should be able to get more done. And hopefully the customer sees like a small value in that. So if you have a product, I would say you need to iterate and ship features or remove technical debt or make it more stable, secure, performant, much, much faster. Like, there's always like a huge roadmap of CTOs of things that need to get done. But I would say realistically, probably like you would cut 1 or 2 engineers max. And for the others, you would just like find new things, new opportunity there. With regards to what they would do, I mean, AI is mainly coming for white collar jobs. It's not coming for plumbing and construction. It's coming for engineers and designers and writers and other type of academics. So that's very clear. It's coming for white collar jobs. I think being customer driven, product driven, and entrepreneurial is more important than ever. I think if you've solely focused on a small engineering niche, again, the same formula. I don't want to be too repetitive, but like if you're amongst the 1% best engineers, you will never need to worry. There's always like that peer group that will be required to make these systems better and quality assure. But let's say you're an average engineer, you can be honest. Like, let's say you're an average engineer. I think the future is grim. I think it's very grim. I think you need to retrain or something. Like, I don't see an average engineer being used in a couple of years from now.
Would you say that engineers are the job group that gets hit the hardest? Or do you think that stuff like accountants, entry-level legal jobs, will that get automated away first?
No, definitely engineers. Without a doubt, engineers. Accounting comes with liability, and legal liability, I think, is nothing an agent can do anytime soon, right? Like, you wouldn't be able to say, "Oh, my agent fucked up my bookkeeping or something." So I think like anything government related, anything legal, and anything accounting based is going to be fine. Accounting tools will improve drastically, and maybe some of the burden with regards to bookkeeping. So when you say accounting, I'm not really sure what you mean, but usually there's like bookkeeping, which is you have to collect data in a tidy and organized manner, right? And that results in income statements, bank statements, a bunch of invoices, blah, blah, blah. And then you basically hand it over to a proper accountant, and then the accountant makes sure they have the most efficient structure for your business. They file things in the best possible way to max extract, basically. And I think the former will basically get heavily optimized with agents, like the data collection, organization, putting everything together. The latter will hopefully make mediocre accountants better, but I don't think they can replace them, again, because of like legal liability concerns and the way most governments and accounting systems are set up. But that's an area where I would say things will improve a lot. Like, especially if you file your taxes directly with the government, I mean, there's still like XML systems. There's no proper API. There's no JSON interface. You use like the most ridiculous data serialization formats, slow systems. You need certificates which get sent by mail and stuff like that. Like, I doubt that the agentic revolution will replace that anytime soon. But hopefully, like, the things that I'm reporting and the efficiency of doing it will get better.
How do you think that will translate over to our industry specifically? Are there any themes or any directions you think that the builder landscape will shift over to in 2026?
I really think that, I mean, it used to be ideas are cheap. What matters is execution. I think that still holds true, but execution changes a lot. Execution is not anymore find good engineers, find good product people, and coordinate them. Execution now means be as proficient as it gets with a small team and like an agentic workflow. And especially if you're a start, like, I think that will lead to a new type. Like, or let me put it this way: right now, there's no way for you to become a doctor, even though you may have like some assumptions on nutrition and heart health and stuff like that. You just don't have the knowledge and you don't have the skills, and also legally it's iffy. Imagine there's a technology that would allow you to, at least for yourself, like, do things with yourself, inject stuff into your system, or, you know, like, it's a bit of a weird example, but you get the idea. It's like you wouldn't start doing a surgery on yourself. That's ridiculous. That's like you need, like, first of all, hygiene, a proper environment, proper tooling. But imagine you would be able to do a small surgery on yourself. I think that would at least enable you to think about what you would do, which before it wasn't even possible. And now I think the same, like, that will happen in engineering. Like, people who didn't even have access to considering building something because they wouldn't even know where to start and who to talk to and how to start getting up to speed and using a computer. Now those people can just like open a mobile app on their phone, start talking to a thing, and then getting a link which works, which they can send to their friends, which does something, which is a product that they've described, right? That will enable, I think, a new cohort of builders for whom tech in general wasn't accessible before. And I think that's a very, very good thing. Because one thing I've witnessed over the last 10, 15 years is whenever people from different disciplines pivot completely to another discipline, there's a high chance magic happens. If like a doctor or a musician or an artist becomes a software engineer or like goes into like entrepreneurship and product building, they think differently about like solving that problem than the average engineer who studied computer science in school and knows how databases work and stuff like that, right? So I think the fact that we will have people with different thinking patterns, with different different brains, the way their brains are wired, will be a very good thing for the space. It will produce, without a doubt, a lot of noise, but I think at the end of the tunnel, when you cut through the noise, we will see a ton of innovation faster. I mean, everything just gets accelerated. Everything gets accelerated by at least an order of magnitude.
But that presumes that there's actually somebody on the other end who will use that. I think the thesis that more stuff will get produced or shipped on a code level, yes, that is true, because the marginal cost and the marginal effort for that has decreased drastically. But as long as there are no new users or no more active users getting into the industry, there is no actual growth happening. Just more supply doesn't equal more demand. So where do you think that demand will come from?
I think there will be plenty of demand, and I think the users of whatever you're building will change, but it heavily depends on what you're building, right? But this revolution actually leads to a complete new user base that didn't exist before, which would probably be much bigger than human users, which are agentic users. I mean, imagine in a world where agents do most of the tasks. It is the agent that needs to do a payment. It is the agent that needs to get a task done or have something rendered or have something computed, right? So I think there's a ton of opportunity to building services, not for human users, but for agents who will be your main customer, who will operate more in a micro payment fashion. But even if you think about human users, I mean, that question to me doesn't really make sense, or at least like it doesn't change. Like whether I build something with AI or without AI, there needs to be a problem that I'm solving for some user. The only thing that changes is more bullshit will be produced in absolute terms. But in relative terms, if we stick to the 1%, it's still the same. So let's say like we have an order of magnitude more bullshit, but we'll also have an order of magnitude more useful tools. And those useful tools will have users, in my opinion, regardless of the speed of development. That's unrelated, in my opinion. I'm not talking about like crypto or anything. I'm talking about like general applications that solve a pain point or add some value to whatever you're doing. I mean, it can be anything. Like, let's say you are using an email client. Let's say there is a musician who had who had a way of using email in mind for a couple years, but they were never able to materialize that because they didn't have the technical skills. They actually want to interact with emails by just making some noises or by just like talking to something, right? Completely new paradigm. And then they end up building it. Obviously, like you wouldn't say there's a user base for that today, but we will never know until we do it. So maybe that leads to kind of like a new user base that didn't exist before. I mean, when it comes to user bases, it's always like, do you develop a new market that doesn't exist, or do you solve and capture an existing problem? Let me give you another example. Even if I would want to open a grocery store and enter trade, I'm pretty sure with AI, I can do a next better job in doing that, being much more cost efficient, being much more smart about every part of the value chain. Obviously, I still need to have some customers, a physical store, a good location, access to good vendors who deliver their goods. But even there, like I just capture a percentage of market share from others. So that wouldn't be a net new user. That would be kind of I capture existing market share. It's always a combination of both. But it's not the first question I have in mind, to be honest with you.
Does that inform any of your macro outlook or macro takes for 2026, or do you have any in that field at all?
I don't. I'm not a good strategist, and I don't like to allocate time or resources into things that don't affect my productivity or day to day. I mean, obviously there's a scenario where if you see something coming macro wise, you shouldn't just blindly execute on a task that doesn't make sense in a couple years anymore. But with only that foresight that I'm trying to have, I don't have any macro prediction. I think the only thing that matters this year is the midterms for Trump and what's going to happen till then. That's probably the only relevant macro thing to look out for.
I'm not so sure if the midterms themselves as an event are super important for the economy and macro trends overall. I would say that things connected to that, so either derivatives or whatever precedes them, that is definitely relevant in terms of the Federal Reserve cutting rates, new Fed chair, etc. So, I mean, I don't think a lot has changed ever since the mid to late 2020 macro. It's There is a strong political incentive for rates to be lowered, etc. There is no fiscal or monetary discipline from any Western government. So these are trends that have re-emerged partly or have just continued existing throughout 2025. And there's no indicator that that would dramatically shift in 2026. I think overall, and I think that from year over year, this has been building up more. There's just a general rise of uncertainty and a mistrust of the resilience and like anti-fragility of the economy. Because I think one of the most defining trends, and I mean that has been talked about millions of times by now in the like crypto and like cypherpunk economic libertarian whatever circles, but I really don't think that you can underestimate the detachment between the so-called real economy and the asset economy. And that is just a trend that is ongoing further and further. And it has to course correct at some point in time. Obviously, nobody knows where that point in time will be reached, what exactly will trigger it, etc. But I think the confidence overall is shrinking. Not that people are urgently distrustful and urgently or like momentarily incapable of conducting any economic action. But basically, everybody is aware of it, at least subtly. If you look at their consumption behaviors, if you look at their investment behaviors, I think the quite impressive rallies of gold and silver are an indicator for that. It's basically like nobody wants to commit to any mid to long term economic investment anymore. And by looking at the world, it's quite a rational take to have. So I think that this has to come to a conclusion at some point in time. Maybe it is in 2026, either shortly before or shortly after the midterm elections, because most of the firepower that the US administration has, they will have to use before the midterms in order to like get everybody into a positive economic sentiment. I mean, obviously economics are not the only variable in elections, but it's still a big one. And that is one that you can, let's say, quote unquote, manipulate as a government, not as in a derogatory term, but given that governments make up between 1/3 to half of the GDP in terms of their spending in many Western economy. I mean, they are the largest single economic actor. So they can definitely have an outsized influence on economic development, whether recessions happen, on fiscal policy, monetary policy. I mean, we don't have to pretend that any central bank is completely independent from their government. I mean, they do not have a mandate to let any government go bankrupt. So if there is a high debt to GDP ratio, which there is in most cases, it is natural to expect that rates will converge lower over time. So I find it quite difficult to be super opinionated directionally when it comes to macro. I think everybody can agree that equities have been running pretty hot. Many commodities have been running pretty hot. I don't think it makes sense to completely stay away from these asset classes in 2026, but I would be much more worried to have a bit of cash on the side just to preserve optionality. I think that is to have a decent cash allocation is going to be a recurring theme in 2026, both in macro overall, but also in crypto. I think there's a shrinking confidence into anything but Bitcoin. The Bitcoin thesis I still think is intact. If price is lagging or front running it, it's like I don't really think it matters that much more. For ETH and Solana and any of the layer one assets that could capture some monetary premium, but haven't proven to do that for longer than a year or so, which happened mostly in the 2021 cycle, I feel much less confident holding these going into 2026 than Bitcoin. But what do you think about them?
Not much, honestly, because of what I said before. It's I would do everything that you said. I think cash, Bitcoin, conservative is the way to go right now. The problem is it depends on where you are in life and what has the highest impact right now for you to do. And I think I'm not at the point where I need to treasury manage anything. I'm still like building up as much as I can and trying to build a business or businesses, invest. I think investment is the only thing I would add. Investment into startups or seed stage stuff, I think will get extremely difficult now.
Well, but if your base assumption is that, okay, more stuff is going to be built, but the ratio between stuff that is unsuccessful versus successful stays the same, then that shouldn't really affect the odds of success in angel investing. You just have to spread your bets a little more. No?
That's exactly what I mean. So order, like deal flow, I think used to be friends, connections, network, inbound. I have the feeling that inbound could increase drastically, and I don't think that that is necessarily the best type of deal flow. That's more like a side thought. It's not that important actually, but just personally, I would be much more careful with angeling.
I think we should go through a couple of predictions of some rather well-known CT characters. And let me pull up one just to see where we directionally agree, disagree. I don't think we have to go too deep into them, but I think it's worthwhile discussing. So let's start with these ones, because I think that these ones touch on themes that we've discussed over the past half an hour. I'll just read them aloud for the people listening and not watching. So the first one is that agentic commerce will continue to gain traction as X42, so that is the kind of internet native payment standard, plus ERC 8004, I don't know what that is, and
Yeah.
proof of agency enable trillions of autonomous micropayments. So we've touched
Let's go one
upon
by
that
one.
theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've touched upon that theme before.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is how agentic commerce will play out, or do you differ significantly?
I think this is how agentic commerce will play out. And I think payment is the first and the most important use case, but I think there's a ton of opportunity for protocol services in agentic commerce that haven't been explored yet. Let me just give you like one example. Agents are good when they can access data. Whenever you have either a data silo or proprietary data formats that agents cannot access well, agents won't be able to do it. And while this used to be a defensible moat, I think now it's a net negative. So let's take construction or architecture, where you have like random AutoCAD or like 3D model data that's just like a little bit hard to process for agents. I think you could, like with with the future of agentic commerce in mind, you could design a service or a new data format or something along those lines where you envision a world where agents will start making floor plans, agents will start making construction plans, blah, blah, blah. And right now, the underlying infrastructure isn't ready for that. So figure out what isn't ready, why, fix those things, integrate micropayments, and I think you have like an agentic commerce use case. And then you have to obviously like productize and build the human interface for it. But this is one example. So I think payment is the biggest X402, but there's 100% in agentic commerce. And this idea of self-driving cars that will pick me up once I order and drive me to my destination. When I was at Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi, for the first time I had that experience. Yes, there was still a human sitting in front of at the driver's seat, but it was pretty agentic, right? Like I ordered a car, it drove me to my destination safely. And I mean, right now I paid through PayPal, but I think especially with microtransactions where you have much smaller scale online services and the order of cents, X402 will make sense. So I 100% buy into that future. And I think you need to look a little bit outside of the box to identify interesting enough problems.
I think directionally, I agree with the prediction that it will continue to gain traction. I think the most likely case is that it is a little bit overstated and overhyped, just as prediction markets and the extent of adoption of them was a little bit overhyped going into 2025 after like their surge around the US election. I think that agentic commerce is actually a suitable use case, one of a few very suitable use cases for blockchain tech as a whole and for this entire industry, because it fits the theme of a requirement for credible neutrality, configurable like privacy settings, immutability, etc. It like a blockchain is actually useful for this, because you want to have a fixed set of rules that we, with our human consensus, control, and we want to be able to trace and to track what these agents are doing and which rules they follow. So we kind of want to contain them. So I think that's one of the few things that really make sense. You don't want to be able to roll it back, because essentially, otherwise, if you just have kind of discretionary rules, there's no way to ensure that these agents, if they begin to transact with each other, will actually be aligned, or that you kind of have to hope on them being aligned with us as humans. But I would be very surprised if there was a major breakthrough in that field coming this year. I mean, I'm more than happy to be wrong, but I just don't think it's very likely. Maybe to go to the next one with prediction AI. So prediction AI will enhance its capabilities alongside the growth in prediction markets. My bet is on automated arbitrage strategies between platforms, or even automated market maker positions, providing liquidity for retail to speculate on a broader set of markets. The earlier solutions will be indicators for opportunities before the ability to automatically execute trades is rolled out broadly. Polymarket and Calci will no doubt launch their own app chains, including tokens. I think the last sentence, that they will launch their own app chains, is reasonably likely. I don't think it makes sense to be super opinionated about it. If they have an incentive to launch their own chains, they will do so. I don't think that there's any inevitability or technical necessity for them to do so, just as for the tokens. Like they do not need to have a token. There's no necessity for that, but there are definitely incentives you can come up with why they would launch one. I think on the whole automated strategy side of things and prediction AI, yes, it will grow. I'm not sure if it will be a leading theme for 2026. It's basically just like algorithms predicting weather outcomes. And that stuff has been used for 20, 30 years, but it's more of a back end thing. Nobody or very few people explicitly care about it. And frankly, the vast amount of prediction markets out there in terms of markets being available is not relevant to most people. Most people do not care about the outcome of like third league ice hockey game in Canada.
Yeah.
It's completely irrelevant for the world. Yes, there will be some compute used to try to arbitrage these things away, but I don't think that this will be one of the themes that leave a big dent in the fabric of society in 2026.
Fully agree with everything. Whether they will have their own app chains or not doesn't matter. They probably don't need to. I think they will do it opportunistically when the market timing is right, just to create more value, let's say, to frame it positively. Prediction AI here is a missed opportunity. I have a take on prediction AI, but it's not at all about automated arbitrage strategies. That's like the wackest thing. That's like exactly like I said, it's been done for years. It's a zero-sum game. There will be arbors everywhere, which will be a race to the bottom with regards to compute and quant strategies and whatnot. So that will happen, but it's not at all exciting, and I also don't think it's too AI related. What AI will enable, though, I think about two things, which he didn't touch on here. One is think about market creation by reasoning models. Like having access to what's going on in the world and a stream of information, or even like a Twitter feed, and processing that data and taking it to automatically create new markets, micro markets, and maybe bootstrap them with liquidity. That's something I would be excited, because prediction markets are like a single word. A single word can change the entire outcome of the market, right? So it's exactly what LLMs are good at doing, understanding like human language and doing something with it. And then the other thing, which is much more difficult, is the resolution of markets, resolving a market, like determining what is true versus what is false, such that the market can resolve. I think AI can play a huge role, especially in like micro markets, to the resolving part of them. So again, market creation, liquidity bootstrapping, and resolving, I think, is what's interesting here. The arbitrage stuff will happen, but it's not AI related and it's not really relevant.
So the next one is that simplistic, boring tasks will be automated. I mean, we touched upon that quite a bit in the first half of this pod. I think, yeah, crypto smart contract audits or basic coding requirements will be done well. I think we can agree on that largely. Of course, it is kind of stuck in the digital realm of things. I don't think that any physical tasks with complex robotics will be automated in 2026. Of course, we'll get closer directionally to being able to automate that, but I don't think it would be solved in this year.
Yeah, but it's not too far out. If it's not this year, it's in the next year. I think like in 2 years, we will be at the point where AI will fully be able to audit things better than humans and maybe do like formal verification or and things like that. So also workflow wise, like we're getting very, very close to full workflow automation. The bottleneck in workflow automation is not actually whether an AI is smart enough or not. It's more the tooling around it to connect anything to anything, which there's some stuff that exists, but it's a little bit cumbersome. I think like an agentic version of that would be appreciated. Think of like my emails being available in a secure manner and, there being like access to my calendar, to my Slack, to certain types of messages or documents that are relevant. And then basically like I mean, here it says boring tasks. I'm even going a step further and talk about any task. But yeah, boring tasks I think will get automated for sure in the next 2 years.
Next one is decentralized robotics will 10x. I'm somewhat concerned that decentralized robotics will end up in a similar fashion as Deepin did last cycle, or how DeSci ended up in the last year. Or maybe it was even in late 2024, or also how AI agent coins ended up in late 2024. It is directionally correct that there is symbiosis between blockchain tech, internet capital markets, immutable data chains, etc., and having decentralized access to robotics, one as kind of an operating system and as like a log of whatever they do, whatever they think, also in terms of capital formation. Yet I don't think that in this year we will see anything of significant substance.
Can you explain to me what decentralized robotics is? I don't get it.
I would assume, well, I mean, it's kind of like these agent coins that were just LLM wrappers that we saw in November and December 2024, but for robotics. So that it's essentially going to be like the dentist coin of 2026, in my opinion. I have a hard time seeing how, as of now, there is like a production ready operating system that is using blockchain tech that is running.
But what is decentralized robotics? Like, just give me one example.
I don't know. No,
I think it
I don't
doesn't
think
make
anybody
sense.
can explain it properly.
No, I think it doesn't make sense because the decentralized part doesn't make sense here. Like, decentralization refers to either technical decentralization, which is basically different actors running something, or it refers to political decentralization, which means there's multiple entities with decision making power, or something else, right? But like in the context of robotics, like when I think of a robot, whether it's a machine or a drone or some physical hardware object, there can only be like shared robotics where people have access to robotic resources in a shared manner, but that's much closer to a server. Decentralized robotic indicates that different parties in different places of the world will work towards some robotics solution, or maybe something like, instead of like having it centralized like Boston Dynamics, I forgot the name of the company, you have, I don't even know what it like. I really don't think it makes sense. Like robotics is probably the single thing that has to be the most tidy centralized organization ever. Otherwise, it's like prone to fail, in my opinion. Like I don't see this at all.
My naive assumption would be that the closest thing that fulfills that term is a similar way that you had these deep-in networks where you essentially use your robot or whatever and the stuff that it does, and you get rewarded in form of an equity-esque token
I see.
for giving that data as training data back to the network. That's I think the most obvious application of that term.
So it's basically, okay, I think that makes a little bit more sense, in the sense that you provide a resource to the network and you get rewarded by it from the network. And there could be that, hey, I have a fleet of drones. I have 20 drones in Europe, in Paris. If you want to have access to my drones, just buy the coin, pay with the coin. Then you get access to managing the drones, do whatever. And then you send them back, right? And then you use them for 2 hours. And maybe I got like some tokens for it. Is that what it indicates?
Probably. I think Andrew Kang, he wrote a couple of long form theses on the whole robotics trade and robotics industry. I must say it's a field that I personally have not looked into at all. The only touch point I have with robotics is that I bought like a vacuuming robot on Black Friday to clean my home.
You know what? I think decentralized robotics still. So I first of all don't understand it at all. But with my very spare understanding of decentralized robotics, I don't think it makes sense because of the fungibility problem. I think robotics is most effective locally, when it's within a physical proximity to me, whether it washes my car, it vacuums my home, it does like some drone footage of my property, I don't know, like delivers something to me, it repairs something that I can't repair because it's somewhere weird. Like, accessing robotics, like the decentralization part, I think is much less important here. It feels like a completely made up solution to a problem that doesn't exist. But anyways, I guess we should move on.
Yeah, I mean, this, the made up solution to a problem that doesn't exist. I think it still applies to a vast majority of projects being built in our industry. But nevertheless, prediction number 5 is that crypto deepen DPAI, whatever that is, protocol will become very good at modeling edge cases by leveraging its distributed structure. Yes, given the increase of data being available and the sophistication of AI models, it is probably true. I don't know if just by modeling edge cases, you're able to better prevent them. Yeah, but I'm not very opinionated.
I have no opinion on Deepin. There hasn't been a single day yet where I got excited about Deepin. No opinion on Deepin, honestly.
Deepin has, to some extent, been overhated as a sector. So I do think that there is a chance of resurgence in 2026. Stuff like helium actually gets used. So these are much more useful products, much more adopted products than most of the stuff that is being built in the more crypto native for crypto native side of things. Of course, the struggle remains to properly monetize them and to fix the issuance model of these tokens. I don't know if that will get fixed in 2026. Not too opinionated about that. So let's move on to the next one. An AI protocol will reach the top 10 crypto tokens by market cap. Possible, but again, not very opinionated.
I mean, what is an AI protocol? That's like
Yeah, that's
so
a hard
vague.
question. I mean, is it the closest ones to that definition would probably be Near Protocol or BitTensor, but I don't think that it really makes sense to try to categorize these things as an AI project. I mean, what is an AI project?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on that. I think it's a poor statement because the way I would frame it is more than something like two out of 10 projects in the top 10 will become, at least 2 out of 10 projects in top 10 will heavily incorporate AI into their offering, right? Like it's more so that like AI is a horizontal tool. It touches everything. And I think every company needs to become an AI company. Every content creator needs to also use AI. And I think every crypto protocol also needs to be AI native at some point and not just use AI for the development of features, but also prepare for, I don't know, agentic commerce and so on. So I think like, I don't like that framing.
I think the next one we just talked about, Deepin will have its glory moment. I think there's a chance for that to just receive more attention as a subsector of the industry. I'm not sure, or I doubt, that this will conclude in more longer term value accrual mechanisms of these Deepin tokens, but I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. It's a sector I would kind of like to see win because people that are building in it are generally not the short term Hayden Davis type extractors, but they actually have competence or backgrounds in the fields that the Deepin network or project is concerned about, may it be telecommunications, energy, or whatever. And I think that these baseline utilities are still something that in in a very significant part of the world are underserved. So whatever is innovated and grown to improve that, I'm generally in support of. So I'd be very happy to see it win.
I'm not. And the reason for that is,
No energy for Africa.
I mean, I would be surprised if there's one episode of Odyssey Roundtable without at least one edgy, low-key racist comment. But jokes aside, so it's not really a problem. And let me explain. So storage, digital storage is a solved problem. It's very accessible, very cheap anywhere in the world. Electricity is fungible. You can't really buy electricity from Africa if you live in Europe. It doesn't make any sense. And if you do, to offset some stuff, that you can already do today. So electricity you literally need from your roof, from your neighbor, or from your local grid. And I mean, some sort of like decentralized neighbor electricity network is nice and makes sense. But even there, I would say buy Bitcoin as digital electricity, and it's probably closer to what Deepin's trying to achieve than these weird networks. I really think weird is the right term. And fungibility applies to a lot of these things, right? So it's not necessarily that I need like a global decentralized network for these things. It's actually the opposite. I need small local networks, potentially even mesh networks in my community to access these.
Is that the revival of 2022 osmosis mesh security?
No, mesh security is something else. Mesh more refers to, I mean, look, in Berlin right now, there's like an electricity outage somewhere, right?
Yep. I timed
And
my exit from Berlin for January quite well, I guess.
perfect. So
just left Berlin right in time to be 500 miles off the coast of Venezuela.
oh wow, okay, we got to talk about that. But basically, what I wanted to say is So internet was also off, and even if you had like charged phone batteries, there was no access to internet because the internet towers, like the signal towers, basically on top of the houses and stuff, they were also down because they function with electricity, obviously. Now, if you would have a mesh system where people would run a mesh network and they would have at least sufficient amount of battery powers to run the mesh network, internet wouldn't be gone. This mesh network could have access to internet, for example. It's very far-fetched because there's many details. First of all, you need to have batteries. Second of all, like the mesh network needs to exist and communicate with each other, and people need to be aware and so on. So I think it's still like 10 years out. But again, like, it's a local thing, and it's like 1 in 50 years. It's not a real problem that you need to solve. I don't know. Again, DeepIn conceptually makes sense. Practically, never really I never really got excited about. We have to move on. So
Yeah,
glory moment. I mean, maybe it will find.
We can skip the V8 one with BitTensor. I don't think either of us is very familiar with that.
That's
ecosystem.
A shill. We can ignore that. Yeah.
The ninth one I find interesting. Crypto will return to the limelight through privacy and verification in an age of AI where data is proliferated artificially. Humans will crave authenticity and privacy. I heavily agree with the.
Yeah.
I don't know to what extent it will translate into price appreciation of either coins like WorldCoin, which are sort of doing this real verification thing, nor do I am overly opinionated to whether it will translate into price appreciation for Zcash, Monero, etc. So all of these privacy coins. But I think the gist of the thesis I very much agree with.
The thesis is verifiable information. Like if in an era where anyone can create a deep fake statement of Donald Trump, when he actually releases a statement, it needs to not just be tweeted from his account, from his X account, which could be hacked. It needs to be signed, so you have like cryptographically verifiable information, probably ideally with the transcript or with the text of what he said on some ledger. And whether that will be on Solana, on Ethereum, or on Bitcoin doesn't really matter. I don't think it will do anything to price appreciation. But the idea that authenticity will come through verifiable information persistent on chains makes a ton of sense. I think that's like very agreeable.
Yeah, I think that is going to be, in terms of actual societal impact, one of the leading themes for 2026 and beyond. The question how to verify that anything generated, anything said is coming from a real human, and to solve or at least come closer to a solution of the whole accountability question. I think that is still underrated in public discourse. When people, like the normies, so to say, talk about AI, it's mostly about, oh, AI will cause mass unemployment, etc. Or there are Terminator-like scenarios where AI is going to fight humanity, etc. I think until then, a much more imminent question is how AI will alter the perception of truth in society. I mean, we're already living in a post-truth society. There's not even any basic premise people can agree on anymore when it comes to discussions about economics, politics, etc. And AI makes that 100x to 1000x worse. I think the entire boomer generation is going to be completely unable to understand or put into context any media that has been produced from 2025 and onwards. Like, they're essentially illiterate now. They are not able to, like, when I see my parents' generation, when I see my grandparents' generation, it is easier than ever to fool these people into believing any weird delusion, because they cannot even separate AI generated stuff from real things anymore. And that really is a big issue that must be solved at all costs.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
So maybe the next one. Tokenization of RWAs will ramp up significantly. The world will eventually come on-chain, which includes tokenization of GPUs and industrial power plants to meet AI's insatiable demand for compute and electricity. I think that is one of the other few verticals where markets can be unlocked and improved in this year. I genuinely think that the best way to play the rise of AI and the digital economy is to participate in the provision of the base input, which is energy. And if you look at the decentralized access to capital, democratized access to capital, whatever themes fit into that crypto internet capital market thesis, the tokenization of these power plants and of these GPUs, which serve as the kind of primary processing unit for anything that is happening in the AI economy. I still think that improving that and making this cheap and more accessible is one of the best ways to ride that macro trend. So yeah, I first of all think that there's a high likelihood of this thesis being directionally correct, and I also kind of want to see it win.
100%. Very agreeable. I think both of these points make a lot of sense to me.
So the next one is synthetic data solutions will become increasingly good with world models catching the limelight. Real world data will be a shrinking portion of that. Yes, directionally agree. We have already come to a state where the consensus is, I think that was in this AI 2027 or like AI 2032 or whatever, like this really viral article by a few AI researchers that outlined a step-by-step doomerism scenario for AI. That is essentially the tipping point when AI is able to improve itself better than we are able to improve large language models. That is the point where we will lose control. I think it makes zero sense for somebody like us to be opinionated about the timeline for that, yet I think everybody can agree that synthetic data points will rise versus kind of organic real-world data points in the future.
I don't think 2026, but in the next 5 years, for sure.
Next one is that neobanks will integrate agentic solutions more deeply, whether this is through optimized swapping solutions or agentic payments rails to offer enhanced crypto products. Tether will likely IPO and further bolster its AI capabilities, given Circle, Visa, and MasterCard doubling down on agentic commerce. I think, again, directionally correct. This is probably more related of what was discussed in 2024 and 2025 under intents, where you basically just describe the output that you have, and there are algorithms in place, either less sophisticated back then, now more sophisticated with AI agents that execute on your behalf. And I think for any type of neo banking solution, for them to be successful, the tech aspects of crypto have to be automated and kind of hidden away in the backend for people to use it, to just make it usable and user-friendly. So yeah, agree with the thesis. Personally not too opinionated about a Tether IPO. Certainly makes sense for them to IPO, especially if they are able to IPO at a 500 billion valuation, which they did a fundraising at, I think, in October or September. I mean, they're one of the most valuable businesses on planet Earth right now. They're owned by a couple of people. Paolo Ardoino will probably rise into the ranks of the richest people on planet Earth if Tether IPO. So yeah, there is a strong incentive for them to do that.
I mean, there's not much to add. Agree with everything on that point as well.
Let's run through the last couple of them. Tokenization of IP will click into place, bringing several recognizable NFTs back into the limelight as the use of AI to proliferate an abundance of UGC, ushering a whole new creator economy. Not really opinionated about that. I think the whole, I mean, IP has basically dropped to zero in the age of AI because it is
100%.
so easy to replicate any idea. It is now all an execution question.
I could take whatever is IP'd and make a sufficient amount of changes, and if I execute better on all the other fronts, it won't matter. It's not so much about IP, but it's more about lore and authenticity, which was one of the previous points. I think if something is authentic and has lore, which is verifiable, that is very valuable. But the tokenization of IP, I'm not so sure about. Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion either.
I think the question will arise in 2026 whether there should be IP rights at all, because everything is getting so commoditized. And I think you can argue that both ways. You could say that, well, everything is basically accessible by everyone at every point in time. So it just doesn't make sense to have the concept of IP rights. On the other hand, you could also argue that given the rise of the digital economy, IP rights are now the digital equivalent or the internet equivalent of property, which says like intellectual property. It is more relevant than physical property in the digital realm of the economy. I'm personally not very opinionated on which side to take there. I definitely see the case for both of these sides being made, but yeah, I think this discourse will rise in 26. It is relevant enough for society at large to pay attention to it, but I don't think that there's going to be anything imminent happening this year.
I agree.
Vibecoding tools will level up significantly, enabling single-person businesses to develop many products that complement crypto independently or with minimal coding experience. Think drag or drop websites or custom user interfaces. I mean, that's basically what we discussed in the first half of the show. Yeah, both can agree on that. Base will launch.
I do think it's not going to be drag and drop user interfaces. In the spirit of agentic commerce, I think vibe coding tools in itself will be more and more agentic. So instead of me dragging and dropping something like an N, which is like an AI tool where I can automate flows, I think it will be more so that I will be able to set up agents that will do certain tasks, and then I will be able to interact through these agents, out of which some can have a drag and drop UI, but I think most won't because it's very inefficient. It's much more efficient to talk to an agent through voice or text them or describe some intent than drag and drop something in a UI.
Yeah, I agree on that. Last one is Base will launch a network token with a focus on rewarding Base app users. My bet is this will be first out of the gate after the Clarity Act goes through, tables for January 2026. I suspect we will see all the stops pulled out to see this token hit top 10 by market cap. That means above 10 billion. Overall,
we have a
discussion.
We have a bet with someone, and I was like, it's going to take a while. And someone was betting on Q1 this year or something.
I think that was with Danny from the DeFi Dojo.
Let's look it up. I would say if it happens late this year, but not in January.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it happens in January. I also am somewhat skeptical about the mid to long-term value accrual mechanisms for that token. Of course, it is one of the most anticipated launches for this year, and rightfully so, since Coinbase's chain, out of the entire layer 2 landscape of Ethereum, it is kind of the only one that is really relevant right now, and I think that will continue throughout this year. They obviously have a large user base for the exchange that they can get onto their chain. They have proven over and over again that Coinbase can successfully integrate on-chain product suites into their centralized front end. They did that with all the tokens tradable on Base, on Aerodrome. I think they did that with tokens that are available to trade on Solana. So I think that to bet against Coinbase does not make a lot of sense. To be overly optimistic regarding the Base token, I also think doesn't make sense, simply because it is yet to be proven how that thing is supposed to capture any value and what value accrual mechanisms will be in place going forward.
I agree.
Very nice. So yeah, I think it was a pretty good selection of predictions, because that leaves us.
I don't think so.
No, I mean, in terms of the topics that they centered on, because there was very little crypto native stuff, so we can keep that to another episode where we dive deeper into price predictions and DeFi, etc.
Let's look into the Y Combinator and A16Z ones with regards to.
Oh yeah, I saw the A16Z like big ideas for 2026. We should do that the next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. It was great.
It was a blast. Yeah, it was a blast. I think this is great.
Actual blast, like the blasts over in Venezuela. I think I'll try to get a boat and head over there, tokenize some oil companies.
We didn't get to that, but maybe next time you can share the latest on the ground.
I will. We'll keep you informed, monitoring the situation.
Awesome. Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Have a good one.